Chronically speaking, we're broadcasting today from Rome and Australia, by the way, and I have a special guest today, Linda, which is doing fantastic work regarding migraine advocacy and empowerment. And I will let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. So my name's Linda. I'm about 52 years old and I live in Australia. And I had my first migraine at 11 and then on and off for a few decades after that. And because they didn't come very often, they didn't really impact my life. And as a result of that, I never really made a huge effort to understand my diagnosis. But around about the time I was about 48, I noticed that the pain in my eye, which was usually a sign that a migraine was coming, it stayed permanently on 24/7 and it hasn't switched off for 3 years now. And also on top of that, the migraines started coming one after the other until eventually more than 50% of my life was migraine. And it just it diminished everything. I stopped working, I stopped driving, I stopped parenting, I stopped socializing, and life got pretty tiny until eventually Linda disappeared and all that was left was migraine.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
Well, it's better now because what happened was most of the doctors pretty much told me you just have to learn to live with the pain. This is something that you're born with. The condition migraine is not curable. It's just something that you have as part of your genetic makeup. And I believed them. I believed them for years, and I became a victim of circumstance. And depending on the lottery of what doctor you get, I got good experiences and bad experiences, and I just had to ride it out. But then one day, I kind of got lucky. The neurologist that I went to see kind of gave me a bit of a kick in the bum, and he said pretty much the same thing. There is no cure. There's not much else we can do. We will try Botox, but really what you have to do is you have to become your primary healthcare provider. You have to get out of bed. You have to start making lifestyle changes. You have to change your mindset. And that day, I was with my husband because I was so sick I couldn't even get there on my own or catch a train or a bus. We got into the car after the meeting, and my husband said, "Oh, isn't it wonderful to meet a doctor that just, is advocating exercise instead of just writing another script for medicine?" And I went off like a rocket. I was so angry. I was so disappointed. I so wanted a magic bullet or a magic pill that would make my pain go away. And I remember calling the neurologist every rude word in the dictionary. I called my husband rude words. We got home. I slammed doors. I went to my room. I refused to come out for dinner. But then somewhere around about 2 o'clock in the morning, I woke up and I remembered something else the neurologist had said to me, which is that you will always be a combination of Linda and migraine. You used to be mostly Linda with just a little bit of migraine, but at the moment you're almost all migraine with just a little bit of Linda. And what you need to do is you need to get the balance back. And I think that the way he put it resonated because at that moment in my life, after literally years of living in my bedroom feeling sorry for myself, the thing that I was most depressed about was that I had lost my sense of self. I'd lost Linda. Linda along the way had disappeared. I didn't recognize the sort of shadow or the shell of myself that I'd become. And because he said it that way, it's going to sound kind of weird, but I kind of put out to the universe, well, what would Linda do to solve this problem? And Linda replied in my mind, and she said, you trained as an architect, you worked as a project manager, you were studying your PhD, you would get out of bed, you would use your skills and you would turn it into a project and you would research and you would not stop until you got better. And the very next day, I went from being like a healthcare loser to a healthcare learner. And straight away, I stopped being a victim and I started to heal. Like literally the very next day, I realized that I could make a difference in my life and I didn't have to be in pain all the time. And if I was in pain, I could separate the suffering from the pain. And it just became this mind shift that shifted everything for me. And from that day on, the pain didn't always go away, but I didn't cry about it as much and I didn't rage against it. And I didn't just roll over like the doctor said and just learn to live with it. Equally importantly, I became more and more empowered with my understanding of what my diagnosis was. And because of that, when I next went to another doctor's meeting, when she told me there's nothing left that we can do, and I started sobbing and saying, but my life is falling apart, I'm worried about all the things that are going wrong, she handed me a box of tissues. And she said, "Look, I'm really busy. You've got 2 minutes to cry, and then you have to pull yourself together and get out." And at that time, I was so shocked and so upset. But now, when I look back on it, I have to accept some responsibility for that as well. I let her sort of railroad me because I didn't know any better. I didn't understand my diagnosis. I didn't understand my treatment options. And I realized I haven't stopped talking. Sorry.
This is wonderful. Go on.
Okay. And so on that day, that was probably one of the worst doctor's experiences I had, because I was just a complete and utter victim of circumstance. And I cried for 2 minutes, and then I pulled myself together exactly like she asked me to. I walked out of the doctor's office, I paid the bill, and I went home. But that will never happen to me again, because the next time I go into a doctor's office and they tell me there's no other options and there's nothing left to try, I'm going to say, well, actually, I've been doing some research and here's what I've learned about migraine. And I think after 9 months of starting to pull myself out of the dark hole and realizing that you can heal yourself, something else changed within me, which was that I realized I could probably help others do the same thing. And when I started to research all the different things about migraine and how to help myself, I realized there was a bit of a gap in the market, if you like. There was either very intense sort of factual information that was written by scientists about migraines and the diagnosis, or there was the chat groups on social media. And they were both great because I needed that hard fact, but it was very dry and it was very hard to follow. And especially when you're in pain and you're very tired. But the other end of it was equally difficult because it was people almost gossiping about their illness. And whilst it felt very validating to realize that I wasn't alone and that they were saying the same sort of things that I was feeling, what I didn't get was how to move forward from that. What do I do with that? And so I guess the blog for me really started about trying to save myself. It was about pulling myself out of depression and realizing that I wasn't alone and that I wasn't a victim anymore, and I could show the world that I was pulling my health together. And the longer that it went, because it's only really been about 4.5 months now, but people started joining the conversation. People started saying that's worked for me or that hasn't worked for me. And it was a sense of community that started to build on the blog that keeps me going. It's not the migraines, it's not the health, it's the joy that comes from knowing that people are getting it and that they feel seen and they feel understood and they can participate in the conversation in a way that I sometimes wonder that they missed out on before because that forum wasn't always there.
Thank you so much for sharing. I think we share a lot of commonalities with our stories,
Yep.
and you and I are considered kind of an empowered patient or empowered patients. What's worrying me is that we are a minority.
So this is going to sound weird, but one of the things that I notice with the blog is that I can see how many people read it, for example. And then I can see how many people press like or they comment. And what I can also see is whether people are opening the links that I'm recommending. So I can say, here are the exact videos that I watched for how to breathe better that made an instant change in my life. And I, like you, am worried that people are not pushing the button. So even when they're gifted sort of the help to start the journey for themselves, I think they've been so conditioned to be victims almost that they don't believe in themselves enough to push the button and start the progress to heal. I think, it sounds a bit like a conspiracy theory, but I almost feel like the system and the medical profession has set it up in a way that they just don't realize that they have options anymore. And if I could say one thing to people that are listening tonight, I know how hard it is. I know how lonely it is. I know how much it hurts. I've been there for years. It's, if you can do one thing tonight, it's plant the seed of hope in your heart, because I promise you that you can get better. If I can do it, a frumpy old 50-year-old lady can pull herself out of bed and make a difference and literally go from a migraine every single day to being able to now go back to studying my PhD, go back to parenting, go watch soccer matches and do all of those things. You can do it too. If I can, you can. So plant that seed of hope and really, really believe it though. And don't listen to other people. Believe that you can heal, because you can. And I think the other thing I would really love people to know is that when you talk about healing, it doesn't mean that you will be 100% pain free. because to be human is to hurt. Like, I'll get rid of the migraine tomorrow, but tomorrow I'll stub my toe or I'll break my heart. That's just part of what it is to be alive. But if you can reshift or recalibrate your relationship so it's less about reducing the pain and more about increasing the joy, you'll find so much more satisfaction out of life. And if that joy comes from feeling the sunshine on your shoulders in the morning while you're having a cup of tea, take it and make it work for you. Enjoy that moment. Stress less about whether or not you've got a number 3 pain level in your eye, and focus on that sunshine or that puppy dog that's at your feet. Because I think the biggest mistake I made was overemphasizing my relationship with pain, and then that becomes your whole life. And if you can just say, you know what, not today, migraine, I'm not interested in the numbers game anymore. It is what it is. You're trying to protect me. You're doing what you need to do to save my body, but I'm just going to focus on the sunshine. I'm going to look out the window and enjoy the moment. And truly, 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 life does get better. It really can.
It's very inspiring. Thank you. Can you share a bit of this methodology that you came up with that empowered you and you're also using in your blog to empower others?
Yeah, I think for me, it was about celebrating baby steps. So don't go all out to try and do everything. So when part of why I was so angry with the neurologist is he gave me this huge to-do list. You've got to meditate, you've got to do yoga, you've got to do cardio. Well, cardio was just ridiculous. I've never done cardio in my life, and there was zero chance that someone who struggles to have a shower in the day is going to suddenly start jogging stairs. That was just absurd. And because of the way it was presented, instead of just throwing out that one idea, I was tempted to throw it all out. But instead, I said, no, you know what? I'm going to have a go, but I'm going to do this slowly on my terms. And so you try and do something the way I did it was a little program on my fridge, do an activity morning, noon, and night. You can choose which that activity be. It might be a meditation, it might be a walk, it might be stretching your neck muscles, it could be whatever feels right in that moment. But make a commitment that 3 times a day, morning, noon, and night, you will try something. and and listen to your body. So for example, he was really big on yin yoga, but to me it felt like a real failure to get out of bed and then lie on the floor. But then I discovered chair yoga, and as weird as it sounds, I suddenly felt empowered again because I was sitting upright and I was doing the stretches that were required, but I didn't have to be a human pretzel on the ground. And I learned that if I bent a certain way and it made me feel like I was going to throw up, just stop, don't do it. And move to the next thing. And if you can build that routine into your life, then what feels impossible on day one slowly becomes normal. And so now, 9 months later, I start every morning at dawn with stretches. I will go for a 40-minute walk with the dog. Then I come home and have my breakfast, and then the day begins. And I've already done an hour of mindfulness before I've even started. So again, it's finding those baby steps, building in the routine, believing that it can work, and really having a go. Because I think the other thing that I wasn't very honest with myself is I would tell everyone I have tried everything. I can't heal because I've done it all and it's not working. I've done acupuncture, I've done this, I've done that. Part of the problem is until your mindset is right, you haven't really tried it. So even if you believe you've tried everything and you're not curing or healing, go back again, start again, but try and do it with optimism. And yeah, 52 years old. I've had a lot of lessons to learn, and it's been a very humbling experience, honestly.
It resonated with me a lot because when I thought I'm going to get better, like I had this initial eureka moment and I said, yes, now I'm going to get better. And I went to the Chinese medicine expert. He looked at me and talked to me for 2 minutes and then he told me, like, come back when you're ready. You're not ready to heal. And
And
this
and I
was
think,
a strong moment, yeah.
yeah, I think that's a big part of what you were saying, that we're in the minority. Again, it's a mindset thing. It's still very doable. It's just yeah, you have to be ready for that change. Like, I look back and sometimes I feel like I wasted 2 years of my life because I just lay in bed feeling sorry for myself. But in other ways, I think that's what my body needed. My body needed those 2 years to just, I didn't even realize how stressed I was until I started to heal. And I think, yeah, the time will happen for each person and it will be different. And I think part of the problem with healing, though, and chronic pain is there's so much shame and there's so much guilt around it as well, that when you start to heal your mind and your body and your spirit, you have to try to really let go of some of those negative narratives that we build into our stories. So for me, not working was bad, but it was worse than that. I wasn't generating an income. I wasn't providing for my family. So the lying in bed just we got worse and worse thinking about that. And I think yeah, at some point, if you can separate from that and you can just concentrate, put yourself first for a little while and really try hard, it is doable.
And the issue of victim trap is kind of repeated in your story and my story and many other stories. Do you think that it really is like this moment when you press the button and says, I'm not a victim anymore, or it's more of a journey that you can kind of structurize in some way?
I think for me, it was the neurologist giving me the kick in the butt and saying, it's on you now. Like, we've done what we can do. It's up to you to make the changes. And I think that's part of why I was so angry that night, because that's not what I wanted to hear. But then on another level, I think at midnight, another part of me realized, in that night, I have to do this. This is on me. And then I did. It was literally a switch that flicked for me, that I got up the next day and changed. And I think part of the problem is that again is, I can feel it in the blog sometimes. I can feel people reading it saying, oh, it didn't work for me and it won't work for me and it will never work for me. It is really heartbreaking to be reading this stuff, because I don't know how to tell someone. I don't. I tried tough love. I try to give them heaps of advice, but at some point they have to make that decision, I guess. And I'm very careful with how I word things, because I would never call other people victims. I can only call myself that, because I know that was my label. In the same way that I refer to myself as shifting from a healthcare loser to a healthcare learner, each person has to decide for themselves where they sit on their journey. But I think, again, it comes back to this narrative. For a long time over this last year, I've kind of imagined that healing is a long journey and it takes a long time. But another part of me is starting to think that's a dangerous narrative in itself. If you start to believe that you're going to be doing this forever, kind of thing, there's another part of me that, yeah, I did start healing literally overnight because I made that shift in my mindset. So I think it comes down to what your destination is. If you're looking for that 100% pain free, then it is going to be a long, hard journey. If you are just looking to recalibrate your life enough to find some new joy and reduce your relationship to pain so that it's not about suffering, I think it can happen overnight.
You know, I have this strong belief that I extensively wrote about in my books and blogs as well, that you have to have this moment when you're sick of your sickness. And one of the greatest challenges for me in my project is to safely bring people there, because you can create the best empowerment program or facilitate the community, but many people are not ready to get better. So, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think I'm spoilt in the sense that I have a supportive family. I had the ability to take time off work to heal, without losing our house and still being able to eat and things like that. So I think it is hard to say it as if everyone can just make the decision to do a healing journey. And for some people, there are single mums in Australia that are struggling to pay rent. It they have to go to work every day. It's not an option. So for a lot of people, they just, yeah, they don't have the option. So it is hard when you write to remember that everyone's life circumstance is different. We all share the chronic illness, but the reasons for it, the symptoms for it, the extent to which our marriages are failing or our mortgages are at risk is different for every single person. And I think that is also why it's very empowering to have that sense of community, but always remembering that we're all on these separate journeys. And one of the things I often say is, it's your brain, it's your pain, it's your journey. And for better or for worse, really. And at the end of the day, I think, look, I said before about planting the seed of hope. In a weird way, I see that as my role, is just to throw as many seeds out as possible and just hope like crazy that some of them will sprout. And so on the blog, I tend to move around a lot. I'll spend one day where I'll talk very specifically about something like Botox treatment for migraines and how it works or doesn't work. The next day, I'll just talk about how I had a bit of an epiphany having a cup of coffee the next day. Or recently, I talked about how I'm a very shy person and I went to the hairdressers. I did everything I could to break eye contact and hope that she wouldn't talk to me. She got gossiping about migraines of all things. So by the end of the half-hour haircut, we were just like best buddies and we were exchanging phone numbers and data. And I realized that, it was a real lesson for me that if you open yourself up sometimes to the universe, it'll come when it needs to. And I came home and I blogged about it. And so again, it's this idea, I guess, of just throwing out as many seeds as I can. So whether it's success stories for other people, whether it's the hardships that I'm feeling and why it's harder than I expected to go through these things, or tips and tricks, hopefully something will stick.
Okay, that's super interesting because I think that when patients suffering from any chronic condition are making this transition that I want to empower others, then they kind of fall into the schablons that we see around us in social media and what we watch online and say, okay, I have to go in this path. I need to be this sort of influencer. But what I like about your way is actually you're just being yourself and sharing your successes.
Yeah, I think I was similar. So before I started the blog, I looked at what other people were doing and it didn't feel authentic to me. I can't dance in front of TikTok and I can't take videos of me lying in bed crying because neither of those sort of resonated with me. And there's a place for both of them because it's great to see people that are suffering who are dancing around and have refound their joy. And it's equally validating to see someone in bed that's struggling because it's a reminder that this is our reality and that nobody except for us really understands it. But for me, I think my background is research and design, and I just wanted to write what felt right to me, which is that here's what I'm learning, here's how it works, here's how it didn't work, maybe it'll work for you. And because it's literally I don't know, like a diary of my journey as it's unfolding. And so I hope that, a year from now I can say I'm migraine free as much as possible and hand it over to somebody else who wants to post about their journey instead. I'd be kind of really excited if that was the end point. But if it ends up taking me 2 or 3 years, I will keep blogging my journey because it is still a little bit like shouting into the void sometimes, because even if you get your claps and your thumbs up and all the rest of it, it's still you calling out to these random names and logos on the internet. But when you get the feedback, it could be as simple as thank you for this, or you really get it, or you've made a difference, or I'm going to go and try this. That's enough motivation for me to get up again and do it again tomorrow.
And you eventually have chosen a title that is the Mindful Migraine.
Yep.
So the mindfulness part probably played a huge role in your healing. Can you share what did you learn about mindfulness can help migraine, but maybe other chronic conditions?
Yeah, I think this is going to sound really weird, but my brain was always my superpower. So I was a little bit of a smarty pants at school and a nerd, and I almost was a brain on a stick. My body was just a vessel to carry around my brain, basically. And I'm not no genius by any stretch of the imagination, but it was my kind of asset. It's how I got through life was through my brain. And as a result, I paid no attention to my heart rate, to how I breathe, to how I sit at my desk. And it was only when I started learning about mindfulness that I realized I'm a hunchy, scrunchy kind of person, that I'm always bent over and that my face is always frowning, and that I'm always carrying so much tension in my neck because of the way that I hold my body, that I started to kind of understand this sort of mind body relationship. That if you're hunchy and scrunchy, your pain brain, whether it's a migraine or a chronic pain brain, it does like a welfare check, and it scans your body. And if it finds that you're hunchy and scrunchy and frowning your face and feeling sorry for yourself, it thinks something's wrong. So it starts, if it can't find something wrong, it almost invents something wrong. So the way I look at my pain brain is it's like a smoke detector. And it's meant to wait until the chips catch fire and the kitchen curtains are ignited. But for my pain brain, all that had to happen is a little whiff of burnt toast and it would go wailing. And so part of mindfulness is just being in your body and your mind to realize that my ideas are going catastrophic into pain mode, and anxiety is getting the better of me. I can now feel my heart rate changing. I can feel my stomach getting butterflies. I can start to regulate the rate at which I breathe as much as possible. It's not always manageable if I get stressed, but enough that you can become mindful of the fact that there is this really strong connection and that your brain is always looking for signals. So why not send it positive signals instead of negative ones? And I think meditation helps. I'm not great at it, but it has helped. Um, Things like Qigong and Tai Chi, anything that's slowly moving your muscles and you're thinking about the way that you do it. But I've also found that dancing is great. If no one's home, I just put some music on and I dance around the lounge room and I feel better instantly. And I think there's a bit of criticism at the moment that mindfulness has become a bit of a fad, and that it's been hijacked by influencers and others who are just making a quick buck off the idea of it. And I kind of get it. And the other feedback that I get is that we've kind of culturally misappropriated some of these ideas, that we don't own yoga, we don't own Tai Chi, we don't own meditation. And in fact, meditation was supposed to be a spiritual activity, not a healing your health activity. But I get all of that, but I don't totally buy into it, because if anything will help me understand my body and my mind and make me feel better, I'm doing it. So I'm sorry to all the people if I've stolen your yoga moves and I'm not doing it right. I feel better. So I'm going to keep going.
I'm writing in my book about the fact that I've became kind of a consumer or a client in a giant supermarket of healthcare, and I'm just picking things off the shelf that I think that can help me. And though I really accept what you're saying, and I kind of agree that we have commercialized mindful practices, but if they're helping, it's great. My only criticism would be that, at least in the landscape that I've been around, like I'm traveling a lot and I haven't been to Australia yet. It's one of my dreams, but it's very prevalent in Europe and the US that um, when you are trying to participate in those activities, not at home, but in a studio with a chronic condition, there is a big sense of ableism that is around, because it's not always about mindfulness or healing. It's sometimes about the coolness and fitness aspects of it.
Yeah,
So
so
yeah,
I agree. And that's what I was joking about, the idea of when I first started yoga. I'm not a pretzel lady. I can't bend and stretch the way the people were doing. So I just didn't go to the classes. I watched them online. And and that would be my advice again to people is, if you can't do it, don't panic. Just find a way to do it your way. And so the Tai Chi thing is similar. I thought about joining the people in the park, but they moved with such authority and such confidence that I don't have that. I've been in bed for 2 years. I don't have core strength. I don't have balance. I don't have the confidence that these people do who've been moving their bodies for so long. And this goes back to that idea of, do you throw it all out or you just accommodate it the way that you can? And that is my advice to people is, if you're not a pretzel person and you can't make the shapes that they're all doing, don't panic. Don't put yourself in a position where you feel like you have to keep up with them, because in Australia it's very much that. We've got all the lycra ladies, is what I call them, because they're always wearing the lycra and they're so incredibly fit, and I'm so proud of them, but that's not me. And so, but I can still promise you that I get the benefits in a different way to what they're doing. So perhaps they're getting it because it's a social activity, or because it's something to do with the class structure that they can. Maybe it's that they've got the time to do it, which shows to others that they're financially viable because they can take a day off to go to yoga classes at lunchtime. That's their story. I'm only really interested in my story.
And this is a big point, I think, that we are heavily influenced. And when I spent most of my years in bed, Facebook started, but it was not mobile even yet, and we definitely didn't have Instagram. And today, I feel that on the one hand, you're less secluded because you are connected to the world, somebody who's been bed or home ridden, but you're also heavily influenced by society, and because everybody is faking such a great lifestyle, you even feel worse. So I wanted to ask you about this tension between, as you said, doing what you can to pushing yourself so you can get a bit better in what you're trying to do or get a bit better.
Yeah, I think one of the things that someone pointed out to me is set your benchmark low. So don't worry about stretch goals, because we're not fit enough for that yet. So just make my goal for today to walk to the end of the street, because I know that I can do that. And then tomorrow, because I achieved that, I'm going to feel proud of myself because I achieved my goal. So now walk 2 blocks and go home. And I know that I can do that. So I will do that. It's not worth getting up tomorrow and saying, I'm going to set up my app and I'm going to walk 5,000 steps and I'm going to cover 2 kilometers, or I'm going to walk for an hour. You're not going to get there. And then you're just going to come home and feel like you've wasted your time and your energy. Set realistic goals, make them small. This is this thing I was talking about, baby steps, and celebrate them. You did it. Woohoo. You got to the end of the street. That's fantastic. And again, you know, the influencers will laugh. Okay, so be it. I'm proud of the fact that I made it to the end of the street, and I've been taking photographs of me at the end of the street when I first started, so that I could remind myself. And if tomorrow it's a really bad pain day, and they happen still, so I'm not cured by any stretch of the imagination, and I can't get to the end of the street, that's okay too. I've learned to be kind to myself. But what I will try to do is still walk a lap around the bedroom, do something that kind of maintains the routine, so that the next day when I am feeling a bit better, I'll get back up to the end of the street, and then I'll do the 2 blocks, and then I'll do the 3 blocks, and I'll build it back up again, because chronic pain is cruel. It's a nasty, whichever way you do it, it steals a lot from you. It steals your confidence, it steals your time, it steals your energy. But if you just keep trying in these small baby steps. I heard a phrase the other day, which is inch stones. So instead of milestones, you aim for the inch stones, tiny little baby steps. And I am here for it. I love it, because when I was at my sickest, that was all I could achieve, were tiny little baby steps. But if you, and this is where it's hard, because you can build up a sense of community online and all the rest of it, and you can have a loving family and you can have people that believe in you. But really, at the end of the day, you have to believe in yourself and you have to celebrate yourself, because sometimes I remember coming home from my 1 block walk, and I've got 2 teenage daughters and they didn't care. And my husband would give me a kind of a cursory thumbs up, but even in his mind, it was pretty lame. But for me, it was epic. I'd done so much more than I'd done yesterday. So just again, it doesn't have to be lonely, but you have to have the pom-poms out for yourself, because sometimes nobody else will. And that's not because it's anybody's fault. It's just that's the nature of life, because nobody fully understands it except the people that are going through it. So that would be my other advice, is if you can find even just one other person that you can have a cup of tea with every now and then, who does get it, who has either had it or has enough of a relationship with pain that they can understand you, it just makes life so much less lonely. And if you can't find that, because for some people they can't, then try and find someone online that you can talk to or listen to, so that you know that yeah, you can keep going and you can keep trying. Because at my darkest, I believed that I was the only person in the world that could possibly having this much pain every day and still be alive. And so I think and now I look back on it, and I'm so far from being alone. Like people come on my blog who say they had a migraine every day for 7 years. Like mine was 2. I cannot even imagine 7 years. So I think again with the narrative, if you can tell yourself that you are so much stronger than you imagine, you are so incredibly resilient because you got through today and you're going to get through tomorrow. But at the same time, this tension you're talking about. Don't lean into that either. Like, be resilient, be a super warrior, be strong, but don't accept that as your future either. So, congratulate yourself for getting through today, but don't kind of wish that on yourself for tomorrow, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I think it has to do a lot with routines also, because when I freestyled it, these baby steps were more harder to achieve than if, as you said, you make one lap across uh, your living room, or around your living room, or you go around the block. When I had a daily routine, and I called it the rehabilitation hour, it was from 6 to
Yep.
7 because in Israel it's very warm and the weather allowed it back then. So for me, it doesn't matter if I walked 100 meters or I managed to walk the kilometer. It was something that really contributed to my self-cheering, as you mentioned, and it builds up, I think, resilience and the sense of ability. So how would you recommend people with chronic pain or chronic illness, or that are bed or home ridden, to start developing those routines?
Yeah, I think in a weird way, I think of it almost like a traffic light system. So the green, the amber, and the red. And you can turn it around which direction you want to go. If you want to start and say, I am so unwell at the moment that getting out of bed is a chore, then start with tasks that you can do in bed. Bring your laptop to bed, learn how to breathe better. I'd never realized how much of a shallow, fast breather I was until I started to watch videos. So I was only breathing in the top half of my lung because I was always so anxious and in pain. When I started to take deep breaths, it sounds so weird, but I started to like have a new lease on life because I was actually getting oxygen into my body. You can do that in bed. You can watch a video on how to meditate or listen to a guided meditation. You can, learn how to stretch your neck muscles, for example, or find about the pressure points that are in your hand or around your eye and your temples. And you can do that in bed. That can be the first part of your routine. And you can say, I'm going to do this for a whole week. I'm going to learn about these things, and I'm not even going to have to get out of bed for it. And then when I'm ready, I'm going to do the next step, which will be walking around the block. It'll be stretching out on the ground. It'll be trying chair yoga. And then when I'm ready, I'm going to do the bigger stuff, which is I'm going to maybe try a gentle jog. But for me, that will never happen because it jiggles my head and I'll never be okay with that. But you just create almost like a string of beads and you work your way along the line. You don't need to be at the end today. Just start at the beginning with the little tiny manageable things and eventually you'll get to the end. Or you won't. You'll get to a place of greatest comfort that helps you heal, and that's enough.
That's really inspiring. I felt very lonely, not only as a patient with chronic illness, but also as somebody who is trying to help others. Like, you feel very lonely. It's like you're on the top of the walls screaming, or the top of the tower. And it really resonated with me that eventually the people that manage to kind of escape this vortex of miserableness um, share some sort of same methodologies. Like, we all came up to this from different directions, but we share a lot
Yep.
in common.
Yeah.
And I think that eventually, once you convinced yourself that you are able to do something that you didn't think you could do before, then the sense of ability is kind of exponential in a way. Because if you told me a decade ago that I will sit now in Rome after being in 5 countries in the last 2 weeks, speaking, empowering others, I would really think that you're hallucinating. But it just happened because, like, first few steps, the first kilometer, the first steps, literally to climb up and so forth.
Look, the way I look at it is if I can pull one person up, just one, then that person might pull one person up. And then I kind of imagine in my mind this huge chain of us all pulling each other up. How great would that be? So you're already 2, 3 steps ahead of me, pulling up handfuls of people. So, yay, you. I'm 2, 3 steps behind, but there's 2, 3 steps behind me are others. And I think that's part of the power of what we can do is we're not talking from on high in academia, in textbook land, and doctors all, pontificating on the world. We are saying we have lived experience of this. I know how you feel. I'm just a fraction further ahead than you are. And if I can do it, you can do it. And I'm going to pull you up. And then when you're feeling better, you can pull someone else up. And then we'll all keep pulling each other up. And it's almost, I don't know if that's the right metaphor, but if we, all our little ripple effects combine, we'll create a tsunami of good health
Yeah,
kind of thing and good outlook. And um, yeah, we need more people like you, and we need
thank
people who are
you.
growing like me. I'm getting there. I'm getting there. I'm still very much a learner. You're a leader, just slightly different on the.
We're all leaders.
But it's if we just have the confidence to believe in ourselves, then once that really sinks in, you start to have the confidence to explain it to other people. But the only way you get there is through practice, like anything. And I keep sort of reminding people when we were born, we couldn't talk, we couldn't walk, we couldn't feed ourselves, we couldn't dress ourselves, we had no skills whatsoever.
Yeah.
This is no different. We are just learning a new set of skills in the same way that we always have. It will take time. We're going to mess it up. We're not going to get it right on day one, but we're going to get there eventually. And if we just keep plugging away, it's not going to be tomorrow, but it will happen.
I think that your positivity is very infectious, and you just sparked some ideas in me that um, when you make this transition from kind of self healing to advocating and trying to pull other people along the way, we make this mistake more than often that we need to empower millions of people. And what you said right now really resonated with me. It's enough
Yeah,
to
I
empower
see.
one person.
One is enough. And I tell you why it's hard to remember because again, the format that I use, like the blogs and LinkedIn and Instagram, the places that I hang out, are very metric hungry. They're always giving you number data. This is how many followers you have. This is how many people have read your blog. This is how many people have ticked the box that they liked it. And if you get hung up on those numbers, it is really easy to get frustrated and feel like it's worth giving up. If 100 people are visiting and only 10 are signing up, gosh, my conversion rates are really bad. Is it really worth my time to be here? But that's what I was saying. Forget quantity, go back to quality. If one person writes to you and says, thank you, you made a difference, I'm going to try this. That is what you want. Don't worry about the numbers. Don't worry about how many people like your LinkedIn page. That doesn't matter at the end of the day. I know that the influencers will tell you that, and I know that the software will tell you that, but that's not the real world. Just pull that one person up and have the confidence that that one person will go on to inspire one other person. And what a great world that is.
Absolutely. Thank you for this reminder. You're personally inspiring me, which is wonderful. And this is why I started this podcast, because I feel that these stories can really help people pull themselves out of their beds. And before I reach the last question for today, I wanted to ask you if you have anything else you want to add.
For me, I just want to remind people again, plant that seed of hope. You can change and you can heal, and it might not be the way that you imagined or how you envisioned the journey ahead, but you can do it. So have a go because life, even if it's just a fraction of an improvement and you find a little bit more joy and a little less pain, isn't that worth it?
Absolutely. Thank you for this. So, my last question is actually a question that you will ask me. You know, we have a little tradition that the last question is the guest is asking me whatever they like, putting me up on a stand, so to say. And do you have anything you would like to ask me?
Yeah. So when we talk about this idea of the narratives that you tell yourself, for example, and you can look back and see how far you've come in the last 5 years, for example, you mentioned like you wouldn't have believed it, how surreal it is now. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Wow, this is a very hard question for people with chronic illness, because when I ask some friends, they say, "Oh, I will be, 2 steps ahead in my management ladder," or, "I'll have a baby," or whatever. And for me, I think it's always this kind of survival mode creeping in. So the survival pain brain, as I said, is
Mm.
telling me you'll be stable enough to not suffer as much. But my empowered brain is telling me that I think that my writings and work will reach 1 million people. And it's not out of a wish to success, it's out of a wish to empower. And my greatest wish is really to be in a position in my life that I'm in control of my illness and not the other way around.
Yeah, I 100% believe that you will reach 1 million people. And I think that your surviving brain will eventually be replaced by your thriving brain, and you will achieve what you want. And but again, be kind to yourself because it takes time and energy. But I believe in you.
Thank you so much for your inspiration and again, infectious positivity. We really need this in our world. I know Australia is far away, but you need to spread this tsunami across the globe.
I'll be doing my
Um,
best, but right now I'll probably go to bed, to be honest. It's nine
oh, right,
o'clock
because
and in Australia, I go to bed early. I need my sleep to survive tomorrow.
for me, like in Italy, the day is just, kind of starting.
Stretching out ahead of you. Yeah.
Yeah. But again, Linda, thank you so much. I will add the link to your blog, to the podcast description. If you want to follow Linda on LinkedIn and other social media, you'll find the links there. And again, thank you for the work that you're doing. And I'm super happy to see you out of bed because for me, this is the most important thing that people are feeling better. And I have pain right now, and I hope you don't, but we're not living the same life as other people. But to see you so positive now really gave me a lot of hope for my own future. And again, thank you so much for taking the time
No, you're
late
more than
evening.
welcome. And thank you for everything that you do. You're a superhero.
Thank you so much. And I see you guys next week.
See ya.